we're not saying words like taboo and men's mental health in 10 years time. It is just a normal conversation. It is actually, rather than talking about how many pints we can drink on a weekend, let's talk about how your week's been, or is there anything I can help you with? So that's kind of my main goals, to be honest.
Welcome to Bigger Than the Hustle podcast, where I bring you real conversation with entrepreneurs on how they live their lives outside their business. We deep dive into the energies, the motivations, the habits, the disciplines, and the mindsets that give them success in their life, that leads to success in their business. Now, if you're interested in property, building a life that you want to live, mental health, well, today's conversation is really going to interest you. I've got someone on with me, Aren, and I got introduced to Aren through another person I've on the podcast, who's Joshua. And I had a conversation between these two, and I find it really interesting. So I'm going to continue with this and introduce him. So hi, Aren.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having me on.
Not at all. Thank you for giving up your time and being a part of this, and hopefully we can share some light for the people around us. So if I can hand over the mic to you, if you can give a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then we can run the conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm usually more comfortable being on your side of the mic, as I said, to record. So I am actually the host of two podcasts. So one is strictly a men's mental health podcast called the Black Country Blokes, where there's me and four guys, and we just sit there and talk about all things really, just life, things that are authentic and being as transparent as possible as men in today's society. And also having my own podcast called Find Your Voice, which has been around for about 18 months now. Again, it touches on adversity, overcoming obstacles, and it's really to inspire hope for anyone really. And it's strange because I'm looking at that sign behind you where you say, I write my own story. The tagline is find your voice and write your own story. So you have some commonalities there.
Symbiotic.
Absolutely. And but in terms of how I've been able to at least spend time on a podcast, because it does take quite a lot of energy, especially if you're editing it yourself and stuff in the social media aspect, it's been through property. So property has allowed me to just free up my time and get some time back to really focus on the things that I love to do. So I started 9 years ago. I was a landlord, but kind of I didn't really do much to become a landlord. Then my mom kind of helped me navigate that road. She did a lot of the work. I was working in London at that time. And then about 5 years ago, I went full time into it, really kind of tried to understand it, made more mistakes than probably most people ever make in life. But as a result of that, you live and learn, and providing you're willing to just keep moving forward and taking those lessons on, you get slightly better. So I believe I'm slightly better now, like 5 years on. And as a result of that, we're moving on to projects now, which are really freeing up my time. And as a result, my wife's now gone down to 1 day a week. So by design, because we designed this 5 years ago when we first got married, we're almost living that life now where we work from home and we work on our terms.
So much to dig into. I love the little bit of introduction. Now, designing your life. I love that concept when someone talks about designing their life, because I've been looking at this for a long time. What energy and what decisions I need to make now that allows me to have a life later. It's that stoic mentality, isn't it? Put the hard work in now, so life will be how you want it to be later, right? Now, at 20, like you said, you got married at 29 and you're 34 now. What do you think gave you that mindset at that age? Because I know a lot of 29-year-olds are still trying to figure it out. That allowed you to think, okay, if I put these kind of things in place, if I make these decisions now, my life will be this way. And if I stick at it and I, do the grind, maybe I may not enjoy it so much, but I know the end results can be so much more worth it. Where do you think that thinking and process came from for you?
So it actually came slightly before that. So around the age of 25, my family started fostering children. So this is kind of like the first half of the answer. And through seeing children who come through the care system, and we've adopted and gone through special guardianship with the children, so 4 siblings, you realize how important just being able to do simple things like you and me are doing now, having this conversation, or as the listeners are listening to this, a lot of children don't get that opportunity. Either it's taken away from them or they don't develop the right way due to just stimulus and growing up in poor conditions. So seeing my siblings go through so much, it instantly made me have a new appreciation of life. And I was quite a lazy person. I'll openly say that. I think prior to 25, I was one of those people who was very academically bright. I could look at something and within 30 seconds, I could remember it. So passing exams was never a problem. I was a grammar school student. I went and did a degree and a master's, and I would revise literally 3 hours before an exam and I'd pass the exam. I wouldn't remember much of it afterwards, but I'd pass that exam just through sheer rote learning. And what that actually did was, as I call it, the gift and the curse that I had, because as a result of it, I wasn't really trying. I wasn't really maximizing my potential. And it was only when I seen my siblings, I started to recognize that you have so much more potential and you're not using it. Whereas these kids would love to have even just a little bit of that because they have so much enthusiasm for life and you're almost wasting it. So that was one of the things that definitely completely changed my mindset. And then the second thing was in terms of property, which is, in my opinion, something that you should only really get into you should make a decision now that you are happy to sit on for the next 10, 15, 20 years. It has to be long-term. That's where you're going to make your true wealth and your money from it. That came about through losing somebody very close to me. It was my uncle, and seeing my cousin brother at that time tell me he was basically he was a tycoon in property. And I had no idea. I genuinely thought he just had a corner shop, and I used to think corner shop's doing pretty well. And bless him, he absolutely smashed it out of the park, and he had the flexibility to give up work 6 months prior to my uncle sadly passing away from cancer to spend time with him. And I always said in that moment, sitting with him, having that conversation, I want more than 6 months with my siblings, with my friends, with my family, should I need it. But at that point, I obviously wasn't there. So I thought, how can I future-proof myself? And obviously investing in real estate, I knew if you get it right, you set it and forget it. There's an element of it bringing in, let's call it passive, just for the focus of this podcast, to then alleviate me from my duties. And I don't have to ask my employee because I need an extra, week off work, for example, to spend time with him. So it was kind of those two things that really then made me look at life differently. And then when I sat with my wife, it was a matter of looking at our values, looking at the things that would get us out of bed, looking at, are we in sync in terms of our vision? And then recognizing this is going to take us 5 years. So it was a 5-year plan, and we're in year 5 of it now. And apart from the one day that she has to work begrudgingly on a Wednesday, we're almost there. So, the aim was to get her fully out of it, but she does do one day. But at the same time, as she has so much more choice in her life now, she's a lot happier. And she actually enjoys that one day because it breaks up the cycle as well for her. So actually, it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah. And it's interesting. A couple of things that really resonated with me, talking about you as a younger person in education and things. So exactly what you did there, which was, going through the education route, doing a degree, doing a master's, and not really trying. It's like my mom used to say to me, she goes, your sister and your brother, used to go up to revise, and you won't see them for hours and hours and hours. You'd go up for 10 minutes, come back and say, that's it, like, you're done. And she'd be like, you haven't done anything yet. Yeah, but mom, I'm fine. And she goes, you'd always come out with the marks. And like yourself, as soon as the test was over, it was almost like a drain switching on in your brain. All the knowledge is gone. I had it just for that test, right? And exactly what you said there. And I reckon I was probably the laziest kid that entered my university, probably, because my mom did everything for me, being a typical Indian boy, right? So all my food was cooked, my washing was done, my ironing was done, everything was done. So when I turned up at university, a friend of mine, so I said, I need to wash some clothes. How do you do that? And he goes, you just put your clothes in a washing machine and you wash them. I was like, but I've never used a washing machine. So that was my, school of hard knocks. So going through university was the best thing for me, I think, just to create a bit of independence. And then I actually find it hard going back home after university, because when you build a little bit of a life that you can start doing things by yourself, I found it hard being at home, not because there was any trouble or my parents were cool. It was just having to actually say, I'm going out and I don't know when I'll be back, because at university you don't do that. You just leave and you come back and you could be dead for all you know, but no one, So that resonated with me wholly when you said that. Now, from when we got married, so when my daughter was born, same thing happened. So we decided that one of us should be at home just to look after the little one, whether that be me or my wife. It was easier for me because I had my own business. My wife was corporate. She was working, in a bank and stuff. So we decided, it just happened that she said, okay, I'll leave career. And it ended up that she left career for 10 years while I sort of ran my own business and did the things that I went to. And it's only when someone, so she was probably more career driven than I was. I was more sort of self-employed, making my own decisions, working, etc. That you realize what the other person does in your life, as in your partner or your wife or whoever, because it made me appreciate her more because she'd given up so much just to do that, right? Now, coming back sort of full circle to that, you say your wife still works 1 day a week and ultimately you want that to be 0. Why is that?
So again, similar to what you just said there, it's the sacrifice and the support and the belief and encouragement that she's given me. So I think she probably saw more potential in me than I saw in myself. So prior to 25, I had a very, very fixed mindset, which is probably one of the worst things that we could ever have. I always believed that you're born with certain abilities and you're born without others. So I always believed I could just remember stuff and that would just be me. But I would never be an entrepreneur because I was more academic. And I was just putting myself into certain holes effectively. And it was only when I started realizing about the growth mindset, because of her teaching me that actually, if you work hard enough over a long enough period of time, you can be pretty much great at anything. It gave me the encouragement and the belief to then go out there and truly find my voice, to use my words there. And as a result of that, I had a period of a lot of transition. So at 1 minute I was doing this, 1 minute I was doing this. But what I seen now in hindsight was she was allowing me to almost find my feet, but at the same time taking on the burden of going to work and being the breadwinner for the first years of a marriage. So effectively, when we got married, I was earning quite a lot of money. So I was staying in Hilton hotels for free. All my expenses were paid for. And this was like at the age of like 26, 27, it was a pretty easy life. Like I was enjoying the fruits of my labor. I was taking her out to all the expensive places and putting it on a card and stuff. But to then suddenly saying, well, actually now I want to be a social worker and change the world, to then, well, actually I'm going to give that up. And now I'm going to earn no money and try and make money in property. And bless her heart, I don't know if she was stupid at that time or just really like blindly believing in me. She stuck with me. And I know those moments when I wasn't bringing in money for the first few years because I was struggling and I was making a lot of mistakes. And I would see her go to work in the morning. And I remember we had a conversation a few years in, and I just assumed, again, it was a bad assumption on my behalf, that she was happy at work. She loved work. And she told me that she hated work in terms of the stress. And I didn't really, she suffered with anxiety. So I suffered with anxiety, and I'll please talk about it. I never bothered asking her if she ever suffered with anxiety. And knowing what anxiety is like, it crippled me to know that every day she's going through anxiety just because she believes in what I'm doing and she sees a future for us. So as a result of that, it just became an intrinsic goal to then make sure that I repay her tenfold. So that was always my then added motivation, that I'd wake up just before her, I'd sleep just after her. And I really, really would try every single day to get to that point. And it just so happened at the end of last year, I got myself into a bad deal, which happens. It happens all the time. And that just set us back. It set us back about 12 months. But I know in 12 months' time now, come the end of probably next year, 2021, she will then have at least a choice on whether she wants to go back. But again, I believe, things happen for a reason. I'm not even sure she would give up that one day, because she likes it and she built that store from being one of the worst stores to the best one in the area. So there's a sense of pride there. So yeah, it's just payback and appreciation. Like you said, sometimes you have to look at why people do what they do for you and just appreciate that.
And it can be, you can get easily caught up in your own life, can't you? You can easily get caught, because I was very, I think that's been my whole life. It's like, the word that, if anyone asks me that's getting married or they're with a partner in a long-term relationship, what's the one thing that you would, give me advice on? I say is compromise. Compromise has been the thing that before getting married is probably I didn't even know what it meant. It was all on my terms. It's all or nothing, and that's it. Going through that with my wife, and my wife is very strong-minded. She comes from, she's a single-parent family. Her mum was very driven. Her dad passed away young, and her mum was, I think, the strongest Indian woman I know is her mum. So coming from that energy, I knew I was in with a battle with her youngest daughter. So it's and she will tell me the truth, and that's what I love about her. There's no airs and graces. It's just, you're crap. You're doing this wrong. Just fix up, or you're doing well. and that's, I'm not a fluffy person. I don't need the adulation. I don't need the you're great and you're that. I just need someone to tell me you're doing well or you're not doing well, and that's it, right? And I think we all work with different types of people. Now, how do you decide in terms of the people around you, the ones that are serving you and the ones that make you a better person to the ones that maybe you cut out? Because I have a lot of people listening on this podcast that sort of are younger, and they're always asking me this question in terms of how do you shape the environment with the people around you? What advice would you give them?
It's tough, especially when you're young, firstly. So I accept if anyone is struggling with that notion. But I'll give a few examples here. So my best friend at university, my two best friends at university are still my two best friends now, but I had to fall back a year because of an extended placement. So I became really, really good friends with a person, and we're still friends till this day, great person. What I realized was as soon as I finished university and I started to develop this growth mindset and really try and change the trajectory of my life, this person wasn't serving me. Now, especially in my culture, we like to have a drink, we like to have a laugh, we like to be part of certain circles. Mm-hmm. I realized that I would then have to move away from this. And there's something very uncomfortable being that one person who steps away from stuff. But I was never stepping away because I disliked them people or I didn't agree with their path, shall we call it. I just had my own path, and I almost felt obliged, obviously seeing my siblings and then, getting married with my wife, that I had to follow this because this was my future. And when I gave that up, my whole life changed. And I know now, especially in hindsight, if I'd stayed there, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you have to make those decisions. And it's so tough because you're banking on something in the future that may never happen. So you almost have to accept that as well, that this goal that you have may not happen, but it's a lot better trying it and just putting those people aside. You don't have to shut them out completely. Just spend less time with them here and there. At least try that, then have the regret of never trying it. So I've had to do that a lot of times. I've done it in my circle. If there's a lot of people that tell me don't get involved in property, it doesn't make no money. And the irony of that is most of them have property. So I'm thinking, either you don't want me to do well in property or, there's some weird intent there. So what I try and advise people is, look, exposure is key. I think exposure is something that I want people to take away, at least from this episode. Expose yourself to people who have achieved what you want to achieve through your friends and family. And then what you need to do is look at their network of people. The people who are successful, i.e., for example, with their physique, who may have great physique, you're not going to see them eating Krispy Kreme donuts on a Friday night or having a doner kebab every Saturday. And it just doesn't happen. So if health is something, then you need to get around those kind of people. And there's nothing wrong with saying to your friends, guys, I'm going here. And I truly believe this. If your friends don't support you for that decision, they're not worth it anyway. And I'm so grateful that, one of my best friends, I knew him since I was 11. He's not an entrepreneur, and yet he sees me doing all this wacky stuff, all these transition stuff, but he's always supported me in every single thing I've done. And similar to yourself, he'll tell me if I need to fix up or if I don't, but he's always got my best interests at heart. And sometimes I won't see him for 5 or 6 months, but the love is always there because all he wants is the best for me. Like I said, we're all on our own journeys. We're all trying to negotiate with our own minds to keep ourselves going every single day.
Yeah. And it's funny how you just said that about not talking for 6 months, but the energy is the same. Absolutely. And for me, I've always said that people, when you're living a life and you're trying to grow, and because I'm constantly looking down. What I mean by that is I'm constantly working on myself. I get very little time to look up. So it doesn't mean that I'm not available for anyone. I just won't make the call myself because I'm trying to work on myself. Now, if someone rang me and said, Bav, I need this, or can you help me with this? Bang, I'm there. I'll help you, no problem. But I'm very rarely going to go out to you and say, Aren, what's going on here? Because I'm just trying to be the best person I can. Because I think if I invest in myself, I can be better for you just by investing in myself, right? With the conversation, with the knowledge, with the skills that I have, right? Now, I think when you're younger, you get pulled about a lot in terms of your thoughts, where you think you should be, that horrible word should, and rather than just trusting yourself to say, actually, I'm a bit weird, I'm a bit geeky, I like these kind of things, and I'm comfortable with that, right? Because we're all just trying to fit in at a young age, right? We're just trying to be part of something, we're trying to fit in the community. And I think as you get older, you realize you don't need to fit in. You can create your own space And if people want to draw in that space, that's cool. But if they don't, that's fine as well, because you know how it serves you, right? You know how it serves you as a person. And you know, if you're strong as a person, you're strong for everyone around you as well. So with especially, you know, you probably have a lot of cousins and family and stuff like that around you, right? And I just, exactly what you said there, it's getting around people that are doing something that you think may be beneficial to you, right? So like I said, let's use a health one because that's quite an easy one to use. Someone who's healthy and fit will be shaping their life in that way, in terms of getting up early, training, going to the gym, eating well, etc., right? And that outwardly expresses in a body or whatever it is. But it's when you get quiet and you look at yourself from the inside and say, what makes me happy? What serves me? And it's almost like, you know, you can become quite military in the way you think, in terms of, I need it to be like this, I need it to be that. No, a lot of the time it's just saying, this serves me. I know this makes me happy. Reading makes me happy. Playing the piano makes me happy. And maybe spending some time with my friends makes me happy. Do that more, because it's not all about a big master plan. Because when you're younger, it probably is, in terms of where you want your life to be. But you realize just being happy and just being yourself will draw the people in towards you, right? And the people that are meant to be there will be there. And the ones you're meant to serve will serve you. Now, do you know, you said about you shaping your life. So when this property deal comes through next year, that'll open up freezer. So what's the bigger picture for you? What makes you happy and what are you trying to do?
Okay. Just before I answer that, I just want to say that what a fantastic answer by yourself there. I think that resonates so much. And that's one of the things that I'd encourage anyone listening to this is find what makes you happy. It sounds so simple and almost like, yeah, that can't be the answer. I promise you that is the answer. You know, me and my wife always say, I remember 5-6 years ago, when I used to think about having kids, it was always like, I wanted to be a footballer, I wanted to be a boxer, I wanted to do all the things I never did. And I think my parents wanted that. And literally in the last 3 or 4 years, it's like, if ever we are fortunate enough to have kids one day, I just want them to be happy. That's simply our answer. So, you know, chase happiness. But yeah, just to answer your question in relation to my future, are you speaking from a property perspective or just generally in terms of
just the way you live? So obviously property is going to be part of that, because that's going to allow you to live the way you want to live, right, without worrying too much on the financial side of it. But in terms of how you express yourself in the world and how you come out in the world and how you shape your time, what's the plan for you?
Okay, so one of the things I realized is, again, relationships are the most important thing. So I want to have as many authentic relationships as possible without obviously putting that a burden on my mental health. And one of the things I recognize is podcast is a fantastic way of doing that. YouTube channels and through my own mediums of social media, I always try and connect with people. And I want to carry that on. But I also recognize that I'm just one person, and some days I don't want to talk to nobody. Some days I want to talk to everybody. And that's just the way the world is, and especially my mind. So I realized that's not sustainable to try and be there for everyone every single moment. Because I have a habit of, if somebody wants advice or something and they say, can I have 5 minutes of your time? I'll say yes, but it normally takes an hour. Effectively, I've just wasted the whole day helping other people who may not even take on that advice, and I'm just burnt out. So what I did is, and me and my wife did this together, was we thought, Find Your Voice helps people from a mental health perspective. The Black Country Blokes podcast helps people from a mental health perspective, and all the content and stuff I do in between. What is something that we can give or bring to the market that is going to help people when we're not there, when we're asleep, for example? As a result of that, 18 months ago, although the idea was kind of formed 5 years ago, we've created something and we're bringing it to market in the next week. We're literally away. So it's like Health Excel. By all means, take this out if it's not part of the podcast. And that's Health X, as in the letter CEL. And what it is, it's a formulation. It's not like a white label product that we formulated for the last 18 months of superfood blends that not only help your physical well-being, but also your mental well-being. So my wife being a pharmacist and me being a personal trainer for 9 years, we've kind of put our knowledge together and we formulated something. We've got it ethically sourced from various countries all over the world. It took us years to find a supplier, bring the cost down. And we wanted something convenient, affordable, but something that when they take it, it will change their health, mind and physically, even by 1%. And the dream and the vision is, can we have something in everyone's household that every family can afford one day, that is enhancing them and helping them just live that little bit longer, just be that little bit happier effectively. So that's kind of our long legacy. And it's brilliant that me and my wife have been able to work on this. Hence, she's give up work and she's really taken this in her stride and working on it. And then obviously property is something that allows us to do stuff like that. We can use the profits to reinvest in this business, but also I know real estate, property, it's going to be something for my kids and then hopefully their kids. I'm trying to set my generations up because my parents were the greatest parents in the world, but God, I wish they bought a few properties back in the day just to make my life a little bit easier. So I kind of almost feel like obliged to do that for my children or my nieces and nephews if I don't ever have children, to put something in place as a sort of generational wealth, but then also have something. So that's pretty much all it is. And in terms of getting to that destination, the key is always enjoying the process and just making sure I'm happy along the way. So similar to yourself, it's not always about, have I leveled up every day? Some days it is just, I just want to sit here and listen to some music of my favorite artist, or I've just picked up a guitar three or 4 months ago, just in lockdown. And I just like playing a few chords on that. And that just, I don't know, there's something therapeutic about it. Or it could just be recently, my wife go for nature walks and we're just seeing different areas of the countryside and things like that. Just what I feel on the day of doing, do it. And there are no rules. I have no employees. I'm very grateful for that. I'm just basically the master of my own life. And I think as long as I'm having more days where I feel happy and then I go to bed at night knowing I've been myself and I've at least put something into the mix that hopefully one day grows to help other people, then I'm always happy.
Perfect. And what's quite interesting, you said, about your parents and your dad saying, I wish they'd invest in property so that it would be easy for myself. But just think about this, Aren. If they did, you may not be where you are right now, because that came from you seeing it, being curious about it, and then saying, actually, this can work for me. If it was handed to you on a plate, that energy could have been, actually, I've got that, so I don't need to think about that. So I'm just going to carry on with my path, right?
Probably right. Again, I was the laziest person.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
The laziest. Absolutely.
So remember, everything happens the way it's meant to happen, right? Yeah. Now, something you mentioned there just when you were talking is happiness. So when like you said, you like to pick up the guitar and you do things that make you happy. Something that I started on Sunday, actually, right? So I've been deliberating. I'm a kind of person which I have 3 or 4 or 5 things which I want to progress. I'm investing in now because I know the next 5 years, the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of things I plan for the next, like you said, the next generations. What can I do now to inspire the next generation to grow? Now, one of those things was writing a book. So I've got a lot of examples of things. It's just examples of my life and things that work for me, and hopefully I can put that out. Ideally, I'm really writing for my kids. I want it to be some legacy I leave for them, but then if anyone else can get some benefit from it, that's cool. Now, one of the first chapters I'm writing about is called Discipline is Freedom. If I say that term to you, what does that mean to you?
I love that. So I think it's Jocko Willick's when he made that famous. And I realized that very, very early on, that if you can discipline yourself through your habits in order to get to where you want to get to, that in itself creates freedom. So for example, even myself, I knew I was a very, very lazy person. And I also know I'm a scatterbrain. So for example, when you ask me a question, I'm thinking of 4 answers, and then my goal is then to try and make it coherent sense for the listeners. And so that's why sometimes I'm all over the place. But what I recognized was I need to become this person, and this person needs to have a certain level of skill sets in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So that meant I had to do more viewings, I had to do phone calls, I had to go to network meetings, I had all these things. So effectively it was about being disciplined enough to stick to what I had written down, and I knew what was necessary over a long enough period of time. So I had to do that for like 3 or 4 years consistently, to then where I am now, at least sitting in hindsight, I've got that sense of freedom back now. I don't have to worry about my next paycheck, or if I got enough bills, or am I bringing in enough money, the same as my wife, for example. So I have created a level of freedom from that discipline. And I realize that through anything. And I strongly urge people to recognize that you're not always going to be motivated to do the things that you need to do. In fact, there's probably 9 out of 10 occasions that you're not motivated. And that's where discipline comes into it. So I almost kind of prided myself on being a hard worker and being more disciplined. And sometimes that would be me having to put it on my Instagram profile just to show people that I'm going to the gym. And then there was a thought of, you can't back out now. You just told everyone you go and make sure you go there. Mm-hmm. And then I also play games with myself, a little bit like David Goggins does, where I self-talk to myself as if like I'm pumping myself up in terms of, you want people to look at you and be like, how does this guy keep going? How is he consistently doing it? And it's only through when you do that consistently over a long enough period of time, you then get the results. And if I believe in any aspect. So I've done it in property, I've got the results. I've done it in my physical appearance, we've got there. And me and my wife, we're working tirelessly for 18 months on that product. We're now ready to launch it. So I'd strongly, tell anyone, get some discipline in your life, because we need it across many areas of our life. It's so
because for me, when I read about that, so exactly what you're saying there, Jocko Willink, Dave Goggins, reading these stories and reading these journeys, one thing that's helped me a lot, especially with my mental health, when I was going through quite a struggle 8 years ago, building a life that I thought I wanted and I didn't, and I realized it wasn't the life that I wanted, and I had to change it all and start investing in my health and start investing in me as a person, is when I set myself that I know, okay, I get up at 5 o'clock, 5:30, I go and make lunch, and then I write, and then I play the piano, and then I do some meditation, and then I wake my son up, we walk to school, and then I come back and I do this. When I have that structure and that discipline, I get up and feed my cat, that to me is freedom to me, because my brain isn't going all over the place. When I'm given too much freedom with my time, I almost become unproductive. Because there's so many things I think about that I almost do nothing, right? So it's like the case of analysis paralysis. You keep seeing lots of things. Because I have no structure in my life, it's the worst position for me as a person, right? So part of that was running. Now, I got into running as one of the first things when I was going through quite a tough time, because before that, I used to play a bit of football, but that's it. I couldn't really run as such. And I thought, this is the only form of training that I can do without thinking. So I literally just put my trainers on, put some gear on, I can leave. Any day, any weather, any time, anywhere in the world, wherever we are, I can run. And for the first 3 years, I hated it. I do it because I knew it was good for me, but I hated it. So going back to what you said earlier, 9 out of 10 times you're going to hate what you're doing, but there's a bigger purpose. And then what happened after about 3 years, I said, all right, Bav, that's it. No more running. I just don't like it. I'm not doing it anymore. Literally within 2 days, I was like, I miss running. There's something that was missing, that I was getting, that I wasn't even seeing, because I kept saying, I hate it. And then therefore I went back and I started again, and because my whole thought process had changed, everything changed. My whole perspective on running changed. And now it's got to a point where I'm training for the New York Marathon next year. And that's my sort of big goal. And it's funny that with my daughter, even my son, I say, sometimes don't have an opinion. Just do it. So she'll be like, oh, I don't like this. Just don't say I like something, or don't say I don't like it. Just do it, and know that it's like when my daughter wanted to do radio presenting. So this was at 9 years old. So she goes on, and I said, oh, there's local radio station. There's a 10-week training program. You go Sunday, 2 hours, I'll drop you off, pick you up, and then you decide whether you want to be a radio presenter. And after 2 weeks, she goes, Daddy, I don't like it. And I said, why? She said, oh, the other people, I don't like the other people. I said, Kaya, if it's 10 weeks of 2 hours on a Sunday, don't have a thought of, I like it or I don't like it. Just do the 10 weeks and then say, do I want to carry on? I don't want to carry on. Just don't have an opinion. She was okay. And at the end of 10 weeks, she was, Daddy, I want to do a presenter. I want to be a presenter. I was like, there you go. That's what I say. Don't have an opinion. Just do what you have to do, right? So now, when we talk about mental health, now we talk about you have a podcast, right? So you have 2 podcasts that you're running right now. Why did you start them in the first place? What was the energy behind that?
It was interesting. So about 6 months before I started my first podcast, I was too afraid to actually go on a podcast.
Which one was this one? Was this the one?
Find Your Voice.
Find Your Voice, yeah.
So before that, I was interviewed on a property podcast about 6 months before. And I was really nervous and anxious. I suffered with anxiety and shyness most of my life. I didn't want to go on there. And when I went on that podcast, what I realized was the positive feedback that came from my story. And even while doing it and even afterwards listening back to it, I didn't find it inspiring. I didn't find anything tangible. Again, it was my story. It was mundane to myself. It seemed really boring, but I got so much feedback. I realized the power of stories. So I kind of formulated this idea. And funny enough, like you just said about your daughter, when I was a little kid, before I was shy, so before I went to secondary school, I was never shy. I was the most popular kid at school. I was doing concerts. I was singing in the choir. I was playing football for the football team captain. So I was like very like extroverted, but something put me in my shell a bit later on in life. I used to do radio presenting with my cousin sister. So we had the karaoke thing. We used to put the cassettes in, listen to the music. And then after every song, we'd record for ages and we used to listen to that back. So it's weird that now I'm, speaking in front of microphones every single day. So cut a long story short, what I realized was the stories are very, very important, including my own story, including anyone listening to this. Your stories aren't mundane. They're not exclusive to you. And when you share them, you give other people the opportunity to hear your perspective, but also you can inspire hope as well. So what I thought was, let's make this a selfish pursuit initially of me finding my own voice, i.e. coming out of my shell. So my first 60 episodes I did without the Zoom. So I was too shy to even look at the person in the face. So it was purely audio. And what I used to do is have Google ready, notes ready in case I didn't know the answer to a word or in case I messed up something. And I was so overly anxious and overthinking. And I was taking stories from people who had inspired me, or I found something inspiring about them. And it was all about them. And then slowly, I think it was episode 100, I shared my own story, which had a lot of positive feedback as well. And throughout that show growing, it was about telling people that your story is not mundane. It matters, that there is hope, there's inspiration, there's people going through a lot of stuff out there. And it just kind of snowballed. In fact, it grew so quickly that I was amazed. Considering it's very niche, it's very like, it's not something like that's entertaining or engaging. It's more like sad stories. I mean, you will probably cry if you listen to a few of those stories. But it grew, and we had something like, I think up to date about 150,000 downloads. But initially we were in like 50 countries. We hit top 10 in like 20 countries. And I was like, wow, firstly, can people even understand my accent? I think that was my first concern. But I was quite relatively quiet. I used to leave it to my guests, but it really helped me find my own voice. And again, with my siblings, just going back to them ever so slightly, I want to be an advocate for people who don't have a voice. So I've always tried to share people's stories who may not feel their story is worth something. And I've had so many people who have come on my show as a first timer who have now gone on to do podcasts, to start YouTube channels, to become public speakers and achieve their goals. And it's almost like I feel proud. I almost feel like a proud father, even though they're probably older than me, that I've been able to give someone that encouragement. So yeah, that's kind of why I started it. It's just an encouraging, inspiring type of podcast that really stemmed from me initially being scared, but then realizing that even my words matter.
And it's interesting you said that, because find your voice is, when I started this venture, it was to bring out conversation. So I have this kind of conversation with quite a lot of people quite a lot of the time, because that's what I've chosen, right? And I thought, if I can air some of these conversations, I think so many people can get something out of it. Because first of all, we are only 1 degree removed from anyone listening, right? So we're not anyone, we're not a Michael Jackson 5 degrees removed, right? So we lead lives in a certain way. And to show this is possible for anyone, right? Like you said, if you put your head down and you structure and you work things out, anything is possible. You just need to have the right information, the right energy around you, the right people around you, the right information, the right environment, and you build that environment to create the life that you want, right? Now, sorry. So going sort of forward for you, where would you like your life to be in the next 10 years?
In terms of everything in my life, or just the podcast?
In not just podcast, you as a person, for Aren.
Okay, so hopefully still happily married. And that's obviously the key. Making sure that my family and my friends are still healthy. I think in 10 years' time, I've never looked that far. I always look at 5-year goals. Yeah. I could stop at 5 years because it's not as overwhelming for myself. Yeah. Maybe that's just an anxiety thing. I think 10 years seems too far. 5 years, I've worked in 5-year block patterns. So like university was like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And then my marriage, 5 years. Yeah. I'd say let's just use it for your question now. In 10 years' time, I hope to hopefully be a father, to have children, to ensure that they are chasing happiness, they are finding their own voice. I think I grew up almost trying to conform to what my parents and my grandparents and people around me wanted. It's just an Asian thing. It happens to many of us. So it was only up until the age of 26, 27 where I was able to say, guys, I need to find myself now. I need to find my own voice, and I need to know what I want to do. So I want to really try and encourage that. I hope from a property perspective to have enough properties within my portfolio that I know that my kids, and I always just count random numbers, so 2 or 3 kids each there, everyone has an asset that one day, should they choose to at the age of 15 or 16 say, I want to pursue a business venture, they have an asset that they can either lend against or they can sell and then go and chase their dreams. I think I want them to have as much exposure in life. Traveling, I've been very fortunate to have traveled, so I don't really have many regrets there. And just to be happy in my own mental health. So my mom suffers with chronic depression, and about 8 years ago, she went on the maximum dosage for medication for depression. And it really rocked my world because my mom was my best friend, and myself, my wife, my brother suffer with anxiety. And I always have this fear in my head that, is it hereditary? Will I have the similar symptoms? Because one of the things I recognize with my mom is I call her the modern day Mother Teresa, in terms of she will always give, and never really, replenish herself. And I was fearful of doing that myself. I was that person as well. So now I'm having to say no to people, which is so awkward initially, because I don't like to be that person to reject someone, but I have to monitor my own mental health and well-being. So I just hope that my mental health is in a good place. I hope my wife's and everyone I care about, basically. And also we can just encourage the conversations, especially amongst men as well, because we have the highest suicide rate. We're not saying words like taboo and men's mental health in 10 years' time. It is just a normal conversation. It is actually, rather than talking about how many pints we can drink on a weekend, let's talk about how your week's been, or is there anything I can help you with? So that's kind of my main goals, to be honest.
And something that struck out to me straight away there was when you're saying no. So again, I come from like my dad. My dad is, he's 73 years old now, and he's always at someone's house trying to help them out and be around. And it's great being part of that. Whereas my mom is very homely. She's very, they're bipolar opposites. I don't know why they're married to each other. They're bipolar opposites, right? But they're happy in their own right, which is cool. But you have to say, to say yes to yourself, you have to say no to others, right? Because if you keep saying yes to others, you keep saying no to yourself. And if you keep saying no to yourself, when are you going to be the strong person they need you to be when you do say yes? So I learned that about 10 years ago, and it's been probably the most helpful saying for me, because like yourself, I struggle to say no. I don't like saying no, but sometimes I know, first of all, the other person, sometimes they just need to help themselves. I don't like to be, I don't like to continue to help someone that I know they can do it, they just don't want to, or they're choosing not to, right? It's the word can't, okay? So that word is banned in my house. I don't let my kids say can't. You say you choose not to, or you don't want to, not I can't. You can do it, you just don't want to, you choose not to. Use your words correctly, because if you use your words correctly, it'll actually mean that you still have the power. When you say can't, it means the power's gone from your hands. It's not possible. But when you say I choose not to, or I don't want to, that means that's your choice. That's your power still in your hands, right? So little things, it's like problem. So I always say to them, don't say problem, say puzzle. Because when you say puzzle, the brain will still work out how to solve it. But when you say problem, it's like, I can't do this, it's the problem. No. So those kind of things, hopefully those little things, I know with kids, like you said, you'll have the best intention when you have kids. And a lot of the time they'll be saying, Dad, shut up. I went in this morning trying to be bright and cheery, woke my daughter up, and she goes, Dad, just go. And she's like, I don't want to see a happy person first thing in the morning. So she's got that hormonal thing going on, a 14-year-old. So yeah, it's and for me, it's trying, just some advice when you do become a dad is just live your life by example. And what I mean by that is, I want them to be fit. I want them to be healthy. I want them to make good choices. I want them to make mistakes. I want them to fall down. I want them to stand up. I want them to struggle, because these are the things that have helped me become who I am, right? But I try not to dictate too much. I just try to show by the way I live my life, choices I make. I train every morning downstairs. I eat well. We drink water. We go for walks. But I don't tell them to do this. I just show them. And I think people, especially kids, they learn by seeing, not by listening. So you can talk all you want, but if you're not actually following up by actions, I don't think it actually goes in personally. And even though right now they're both very averse to training, they hate it, I know subconsciously something's going in. So when they leave this house, because their normal is this environment, right? This home is their normal. So if then they leave to go to university or they go to live with friends, whatever, and they're eating well and they're training, and they realize out there that this is not the norm. People just eat fast food and maybe don't train or anything like that. I want them to know that for you, the normal is this. This is your space and this is how it is. And it was never like that for me, like, similar to yourself. My dad had his own business. My mom was a housewife. And it was a pretty sort of normal upbringing. My dad was always an entrepreneur, though. He always wanted to his own business. He never listened to anyone. He always wanted to do his way. And I think that's where I got that from. Whereas I'm quite homely as well. I like my time. I like my space. I like me being me in my own time. And I'm so blessed that I have the choices that I have, and I have the people around me that I can live the life I want to live in the way I want to live it. Similar to you, you have the mindset that you understand that to make decisions, to make choices, there's certain sacrifices you need to make, but the future is going to be brighter just because you made them, right? Now, going on sort of the mental health thing, what does self-love mean to you?
Goals pretty much similar to what we were talking about in terms of being happy. I think kindness needs to come into that. There is nothing negative or bad that anyone could say about me that I haven't already said about myself.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably the harshest critic. We spoke about football. Yeah. If you watch me play football, it's like, and I mean this respectfully, it's almost like I have Tourette's, because I would misplace a pass and I would just be so angry and just shouting at myself. So I don't need my teammates to catch me. It's weird because I play football with 3 sets of mates weekly, and none of them will ever criticize me because they know Aren is fighting his own demons in his own head. So what I realized from that was I need to just be kinder to myself and have time and reflection for myself and recognize that it's okay. Like, not everything is that serious in the grand scheme of things. None of us are getting out here alive. So let's just try and be happy. Let's just try and leave the world better than, before if we touch something, let's make sure it's better. Let's not make it any worse. And I think I live with that notion now that if, for example, after this now, I have a few things I need to do after this podcast. I have 2 more calls and I want to get a couple of videos shot. If that doesn't happen and transpire, the old Aren would be really, really harsh on himself. Oh, you said you were going to do something, you haven't done it. And all of a sudden I'm attacking my own character. It's like this internal dialogue, which is really like scary to see. So whereas now it's like, well, actually, I gave everything I had, all my energy in this. I would do that the same in the next 2 phone calls. And then after that, maybe I just need a break. Maybe I deserve that today. And then tomorrow I'll try and pick it up again. And it's knowing when to go and when not to. So I'm a very extreme person in terms of, I get an idea, I want to do it all then. I almost want to create a business to launch it in the same 24 hours. The same with exercising. When I have a great day where I feel strong, I want to go to the gym. And then when I finish, I'm like, I'm going to go home and eat. And I'm going to come back and do cardio because I'm ready. And I want to play football in the night. And what I realized was that's fine in your 20s or your 25. But even at 34 now, your body's saying, hold on a minute now. So I've even started taking rest days, which was unheard of for me. For 9 years consistently, I'd say my average workouts across the whole years was 7 days a week. Some days I'd work 2 or 3 times and then maybe have the odd day off. I was literally on it all the time. Whereas now it's 3 or 4 days a week, but I'm kinder to myself. I'm accepting of myself. If I have an extra chocolate bar above my calories, it's okay. I'll be, try and be better the next day. So self-love is doing things that the way you talk to yourself, the things that you put into your body, nutrition is really important, the way you sleep. I'm against this hustle mindset of hustle 24 hours a day and sleep when you're dead. No, what you're actually doing is you're trying to get to dead quicker by depriving your sleep. There's certain things that you just need to really be conscious of and protect your physical and mental well-being. So yeah, that's kind of where I see self-love. And I think we all know it deep down, the fundamentals. Are you doing the right things? I almost see it like, what would you give your child? For example, like you wouldn't deprive your child of sleep to make them do extra homework. You wouldn't give them fast food 24/7. You wouldn't beat them down every time they got an answer wrong. And we almost have to take that mentality and kind of be kind to ourselves that way, if that makes sense.
And it's interesting when you realize that you're not that same person, right? So when, like you said, going through your 20s and coming to 30, now fast forward 10 years and you'll be in my shoes, right? So it's funny because running now is my go-to. It helps all the chemicals in my brain. So when I've had, say, like a week or two where I've not done anything, and then I go for a run, everything seems to level out. You know, I'm thinking better. I'm processing life better. I'm taking a back step. Whereas when I don't train and when I don't have any physical activity, I almost become very anxious. Not just anxious, but I start making funny. My brain starts thinking in a funny way, and everything starts becoming claustrophobic. And I know I just need to come and burn some of that energy off, right? And just going on the long run, coming back, and I feel alive. And now knowing that and seeing that in myself, it's so helpful, because even on those runs, I have meetings with myself. So I don't run music. I just talk to myself. How was the week? What should we do here? You know, you were an idiot there. Don't do it like this. Do this. Like you said, harsh critic, right? If I had a person that talked to me like I talk to myself, I won't need any enemies, because I'll be the guy.
Absolutely.
And it's funny how, and I'm trying to now retrain that voice. I'm trying to retrain that voice to say, chill out. You don't need to go at this speed. Or if you want to spend the evening and just watch a movie and not actually read a book, that's cool. Just do it. If you don't want to get up at 5 o'clock, that's fine. Just don't do it. But be conscious that if you're in excess one day before, you need to sacrifice the next day. So one with that, if you have a birthday party, we had to get together obviously before COVID and stuff, and my family make great food, so we'd eat and stuff. And that's a lot of the reason I train, because then I can just eat when I want to eat, right? So I can enjoy my food. But then the next day, I know actually, now I only eat 2 meals now. So I only eat sort of lunch and dinner. I don't really eat breakfast anymore. But I know that if I've had quite a heavy night, then probably breakfast and lunch I don't really need, because I have a slow metabolic rate as it is. So I can still feel that food by dinner the next day, right? My wife's always like, there's something wrong with you. How can you still be full from that yesterday, right? So those kind of things, but it's just being happy and being aware of yourself, right? So I've said this in a few podcasts. For me, I have a superpower. My superpower is patience. I am probably the most patient person I know in terms of achieving anything and living in a life certain way, knowing things are going to happen if we just have the discipline and the focus to just let it happen. What would you say your superpower is?
I had 2 answers here when I initially thought about this. I think the first one was going to be hard work. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to what you touched on earlier in terms of allowing your kids to watch you do things rather than what you say. So I saw my mom work 90 hours a week plus. I seen that hard work. I seen my dad as, in terms of from a fitness perspective, he was the hardest worker in the room. So I've always kind of adopted that. And it's weird because they never told me they were hard workers. I just seen it. So that's always been one of the things, especially post 25. I mean, I always laugh and call myself lazy before that, but I still always had a job. I was probably the only child going through school, and maybe more because of my financial situation back home. I always had a job since 15. I had 3 jobs during university. I always covered my way through life. So I wasn't really that lazy. But the other thing I'd probably say is that recently, about a year or 2 ago, I realized I was an empath, which I had no idea about. And it actually made a lot of sense in relation to me as a person. And I'm that kind of person where you're watching something with your wife, but I'm the one crying, and my wife's like, what are you crying for? And what I realized was that initially I used to be really embarrassed of it, because I was like, I don't want to cry. I box or I go to the gym and I'd want to talk about something bravado. But then what I actually realized was, especially with Find Your Voice, is when somebody's telling me a story of what they've been through, it was like I was internalizing it and I was feeling it so much. And it used to make me quite upset. And actually it was quite draining, to the point that I had to have a break from Find Your Voice. So over the last month or so, I just had to have a mental break, because I felt like I was almost taking on everyone else's problems. But at the same time, it almost became my gift as well, because I think having that level of compassion, which I know my mom has, I know my brother and my wife have, it allows me to then be kinder to other people, to have that different perspective, to not judge people, and to want to genuinely help people, because I know what it's like to feel pain. I don't want no one else to feel that. And although mine's quite extreme, I wish everyone had a bout of it, a little bit of it, because I think it would make the world a better place. So as much as I used to be embarrassed of it, it's definitely now my superpower, and I just embraced it. Embrace who you are, because there's going to be something unique about yourself that if you can take it out into the world and connect with people, it's going to be massive for you.
It's funny you said that, because just you speaking there, I realized that I probably have I don't know if it's a lot or a little bit or something of that, because last week I was in the car, and John Lennon's Imagine came on, right? And this song, and it's funny because me and my sister, we grew up in London, but my dad and mum used to send us to Leicester with my grandparents. I grew up with my grandparents. My first language was Gujarati, not English. So when we were there, I was a really sort of timid boy, and my sister used to I had in effect 3 moms. I had my sister, I had my mom and my grandma, and then I had my brother and my dad as my mom and dad. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of people around me. But what I remember, my uncle used to have a record player, and that's the one record he had, and me and my sister would play that over and over again, and we loved it. It just sort of sat in our souls, and we just loved that song. And it came on last week, and I was in the car and I was driving, and I started crying. Just bringing back, and I didn't realize that it just created. I remember that me and her sitting there and listening. I was like, literally, I was in tears listening to it while I was driving, and I was like, I've never felt like that. And then something you said actually on the podcast when you were listening. I listened to yours and Joshua's podcast. You mentioned This Is Us, the box set, and I said my wife used to watch it, and she goes, "Oh, you like it?" And I said, "No, I don't like that." And I watched it, and hands down, it's the best thing I've watched. It's the amount of times I cried at the end of one of those episodes, mate. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah,
because it's so real. It's just a real conversation, isn't it? There's so much of TV which is toxic. There's so much that's negative, but this I just found was just such well produced. They had the right actors for the right positions, but it just shows that everyone's just trying to figure out, right? And like I said before the podcast, everyone's just going through their own struggle, right? Everyone is just leading a life where no one really knows. I don't know, you don't know. We just believe, we think we have a plan, and then something like COVID can be thrown into the equation, and then everyone's stuck again, right? So how you been dealing with this time during lockdown and stuff?
I think the first 2 months when me and Josh used to do our lives was, for me, like an amazing 2 months, because I'm a natural introvert. So yes, I haven't got to meet people now. I can just sit and be at home. Then it did kind of get to me a little bit, because I love my friends and family. Again, I see 3 sets of friends on different times of the week for football. I used to go to the gym with my brother literally every day, my parents, and that side was very, very difficult not having that. And then I think there's also that bit where you realize that you lose choice, and being self-employed and having that freedom that we spoke about, that's taken away from you. And I don't know what it is. You almost feel like you're in shackles. So that was quite tiring on myself. But then again, it allowed me to spend a lot more time with myself. We watched like This Is Us and stuff, which I think I recommend to anyone. And I think I even shared that with my parents. And I think my relationship with my dad is even stronger for that, because he's seeing things from a different perspective. I've seen things from a different perspective. And like you said, we're now trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes, which is really, really important. So it was like a leveling up kind of process. I'm hopeful that we can get out of it now, though, because, it is quite suffocating if that's
claustrophobic, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. And, me and my wife, we're used to traveling. We normally travel 4 or 5 countries a year. We're not able to do that anymore. So that's been quite tough on us. But again, we've always kept ourselves busy, whether it's trying to learn a guitar or getting this business off the ground or properties. I sympathize and empathize with people out there who have been crippled by it, whether it's through health, loss of people, or financially or whatever. And it is a time where we almost, as a community, this is why I wish everyone had a bit of that empath about them, and we could just pull in and just help each other out rather than try and manipulate people or take advantage of people. Scams and stuff you're hearing, like, let's just support each other, because this is going to go down in history. And I believe that your actions now will mean tenfold in the future. So even if you just do it for that reason, even if you're being clever, just be there for people and try and help people.
100% agreed. At this juncture, I'd just like to thank you for coming on today. I could probably do another hour with you, no problem. It's just, these free flow conversations I just love. I think when you resonate with the words of someone, and when you have a conversation with someone, that so much, it feels like a mirror. It's like me talking to someone that is leading the life I led, but just 10 years behind me. So there's still so much to go for you, and I wish you every, best of luck with everything you're doing. I know it's not about luck, it's about preparation, meeting, like you're preparing yourself well, and the opportunities will arise, and that's where luck meets, right? So we're going to do this again. There's so many more times. I know we'll be in touch, and if you need any help from me for anything, just pick up the phone or send me a message, and I'll send you my number, no problem at all. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say just before we go?
There isn't really. I mean, I just hope people obviously found value from this conversation. Again, thank you for obviously inviting me on. It does feel like a mirror image. I feel like we've both gone through the same transition, which is nice. So we must be doing something right. And I just hope in 10 years' time I can look as young as you as well. My boyish good looks as well. So I think, what you're doing is fantastic. What you're trying to put out there as well. Again, it's great to see that you've acknowledged growth in yourself, and actually the person you were 10, 15 years ago wasn't the person that you wanted to be in 10, 15 years ago. You've changed that, and this is what I'm trying to do. So there might be something I say or did today or tomorrow that hopefully I can learn from and better from. But again, you said write my own story behind you there. I always say write your own story. That's one of the main lessons I say to everyone. Just be brave and courageous enough to just go out there and be you, like unapologetically yourself, because we don't know how long we've got in this world. I know that's a cliche, but it could be tomorrow, it could be 10, 15, we don't know. And sometimes we're so afraid of what people think or what's going to happen if I do this. Just try it. What literally is the worst that can happen? It's a great exercise, actually. Sorry, just one more point that I do. And it came from a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, probably one of my favorite books ever. And in that, if you're ever overwhelmed or struggling with anything, it's just a very quick exercise of writing down what's the worst that could happen. So, for example, if you're going to go into a property deal, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the worst thing that can happen is you die. But the chances of that happening are like 0.001%, that you sign on the dotted line and suddenly you die. And when you start going down that list, i.e. some of my parents getting ill or something happening, and you actually get to the real reasons of maybe you're just uncertain about the market or X, Y, and Z, it alleviates a lot of your concerns and stuff. And you realize that in the grand scheme of things, the important stuff is safe, i.e. your health, your family, and all the other things that matter. And actually, this is just one small chapter of your life. So just try it, because actually the rewards could be tenfold. So I always encourage that. I always try and do that myself as well. And I always say, as long as I got my parents and my wife, my siblings and my friends, I can pretty much do anything in the world, and it doesn't bother me, because I have their backing. So even if I fall flat on my face, if I do a YouTube video and I look really stupid, they're still going to love me. So that kind of gives me a sense of confidence to just try it.
And I think it's something that's helped me, sort of following on from exactly what you said there, is when you have a fear, a lot of the time, the energy of that fear comes from your own head. So whatever you think is come from you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, if you actually say it out loud, it doesn't make sense anymore. So, you may say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I might, might fall over, or whatever it is. As soon as you speak out loud, you're like, and then you speak against yourself on the same thing. Yeah. So you're saying that you're going to leave the house and you're going to fall over. How are you going to fall over? That doesn't even.
The last time you fell over?
Yeah. And then when you speak to yourself, it's almost like actually it loses its power, because the power is in your own head. That power of that energy of that thought is in your own head, and you're only putting your own energy back into the same energy. So you can't move forward with the same energy you put into it, right? So as soon as you bring your voice into it, it's a different energy. And then you realize you're just being completely stupid anyway, a lot of the time, right? And if you say out loud to even someone else, then that even breaks it down even further. So just a little bit of a tip as well. So if you got that bit, do that. So now we're just heading over to the end now. So a couple of last questions before we go, just so that people can understand a little bit more about you. Now, before we go, I'm going to put your podcast and stuff on my show notes. So if anyone wants to listen to the stuff you're doing, and if any way you want to contact Aren, I'll put his details down on there as well. So I'm sure, he'll be happy to talk to you if you need to. So, we've gone now 100 years in the future. You've done everything you wanted to do. You shared everything you wanted to do. You've got 10 kids and they're all happy and stuff. And your wife is still with you, so it's all good days. But, you reach the end of your days and you don't have enough energy to speak, but you've got enough energy to write 3 words. These 3 words resonated with you and they've helped you in your life, and you hope by sharing them, they'll help other people on their journey. What would those 3 words be for you?
This was the easiest question. Find your voice.
And that makes sense from what you've already told me. And I think there's 2 things about finding your voice. It's living your truth, like what we said before, but it's actually communicating it as well, right? It's actually being able to speak. Like you said, the introvert in you was the introvert in me as well. If you'd remind, before 18 years old, I would not see myself doing something like this, right? And being able to communicate, like my wife always says to me, she goes, you need to communicate more, you need to speak more, you need to do more and stuff like that. And I see now the benefit of that. Just someone can't be a mind reader. Someone can't think about what you're thinking about. And then if it doesn't work out the way that you think it's gonna, you can't then say, why didn't you help me? Because people just don't know, right? So finding your voice and actually expressing your voice as well, I think it's so important. Okay, now this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So you're connected to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They're all alive, they're all conscious, they're all connected. There's no language barrier, and they can hear everything you're saying. If you had a message for the next 30 seconds, what would that message be to the world?
Okay, so I may repeat myself ever so slightly here, but it really is just to urge every single person just to be brave enough and have the courage to go out there and be themselves, like 100% yourselves, embrace your flaws, improve on the things that you need to improve on, but also refrain from ever harming anyone else and just being kind to as many people as you possibly can. I think we're in a society now, we talk about brand so much, and it's about colors and logos and making money and all this lush lifestyle. I believe your brand should be how somebody speaks about you or feels about you when you're not in the room. So why not concentrate on leaving an everlasting memory in people's hearts and minds? And there was a great Twitter quote that really resonated with me. I seen a few weeks ago, and it was, let's all try to create a society that focuses more on impacting hearts rather than eyes. And I think if we can do that, I think that we'd just have the world in a much, much better place. So that's what I'd encourage everyone to do.
Perfect. Now, at this juncture, Aren, I'd just like to thank you again. Thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. It's still taken us a while to get to this place, but I'm glad it's happened. And it was meant to happen today, and it was meant to happen at this moment. And I believe that strongly for anything and anyone listening. When things are meant to happen, they will. So don't try and control your environment too much. Don't try and sort of operate in a way where you think you can control everything. Just control how you think and how you respond to the world, right? So again, thank you so much for being you. Thank you for your honesty. I've listened to your stuff. So guys, look on the show notes, connect up to Aren's podcast as well, because he does share openly and express himself and he speaks authentically about himself and his life. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Now, this podcast was called Bigger Than the Hustle. And right now, just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. Big energy leads to big thoughts. Big thoughts lead to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big actions. And big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
Thank you so much.